Thank you so much for joining in, everybody. I'm grateful and happy to see you on this panel. Before you, I was speaking with Mr. Sanjay Nair, and he shared, insights and his experience. Before this, in the morning, we had Minister speaking with us, Mr. Jayan Chaudhary, a very good keynote. Now, for this particular panel, I'm looking forward to discuss from investors' lens how do the startup of India look like when we look at the startup journey of India today, what really stands out is not just the growth in numbers, but especially last year, the recalibration of confidence. We're seeing the momentum shift from experimentation to maturity, be it founders, be it investments. So, founders also thinking long term, building resilient businesses, not just chasing quick wins or a tag of a unicorn and so on. Equally important has been the role of government, a must to be mentioned in enabling institutionalized risk taking through policies, infrastructure, support systems. This is not just, I think, infrastructure, this is also a cultural change that we have seen in India across cities, not just the pure metros, top metros. We are witnessing a real cultural shift towards entrepreneurship across tier two, three, four, five cities as well. And of course, none of this happens in isolation. Our investor community is playing a crucial role there. Not just capital providers, but as mentors, partners in building this ecosystem. At the same time, I want to focus on how profile of founders is evolving and becoming more experienced, more diverse, more globally mindful how India should look like to the world. With that context, I am looking forward to dive in for today's discussion. Uh, uh, in the larger format of today's discussion, I want to pinpoint three areas. One is, of course, the look back at the last 10 years because this year we're celebrating 10 years of Startup India. So how has that been as a journey for India's startup ecosystem? The different waves of funding, investments, and how founders have evolved in the last 10 years. And then, of course, we will talk about how today's inflection point looking like, how attractive India is a bet looking like to investors across the globe. And towards our last part of conversation, I want to pinpoint and bring out your insights on specific sectors you're focused on. And with that, we will also try to get some predictions. How will this year will look like? Some major trends. And from a broader lens, of course, what will the next 5 years look like when it comes to founders' profile, ecosystem building, what sectors will hold more space in the ecosystem, all of that. Now, I want to open the house with anybody who would like to speak first on the lines of how the last year was when it comes to investment funding. And with that, of course, the last 10 years as a journey for startups in India.
As a member of the National Startup Advisory Council, which has been constituted by DPIIT, which is the nodal department and part of the ministry that is working for startups, I think the government's effort and the fact that the Prime Minister of this country launched Startup India 10 years ago shows that when government really encourages a sector or an area for growth, there's an automatic sort of acceptance because I think in India, we put a lot of stress in the government. And I think the minute we trust our government, so the minute we feel that the government is backing something, it sort of percolates down to tier three, tier four. So it's able to reach a much wider number of people. Prior to the Startup India program, we had a handful of maybe a few thousand startups. But once DPIIT started recognizing startups, today we have 2 lakh, and those are the ones that are registered with DPIIT. So I think the government at various points across these 10 years have also paid a lot of attention to what are the pain points. Because when something new emerges as startups and VCs as a new asset class, which helps startups grow and really reach their full potential, it's important that there are certain things that need to sort of be looked at from a governmental lens. And I think the government has been very patient and is willing to listen to help grow this ecosystem even more.
100%. I agree. I agree. I'm coming to you, Mr. Kumar. Your take on what has happened in the last 10 years and what have been some of the factors that have contributed largely to this journey of startup ecosystem. Mr. Kumar.
I'm going to extend even the time period. So if I go back 25 years, I was probably one of the first founders who raised quote unquote venture capital when we co-founded Mindtree. And at that time, there was not a single VC in the year 2000 when we launched Mindtree. And the funding was quite unidimensional, which means IT services was the sector which was known to global investors outside India. And instantly, our first VC investor was a Palo Alto based venture fund called Walden Capital, which was run by Libutan, who's now the CEO of Intel Lab. And our second, what we call the Series A, was also Capital Group of LA, which is a large public markets investor globally. So from there, I think we have come a long way because I think from being unidimensional, just supporting IT services, which India had demonstrated global leadership. Today, I think in the last 10 years, it's become much more multidimensional. And like Archana rightly said, I think the government has played a very key role in terms of supporting it. And industry associations like NASSCOM have also accelerated the ecosystem building. About 15 years back, when I was the chairperson of NASSCOM, we launched the Tech 10,000 startups, which at that time many people felt was very ambitious. Thinking in terms of 10,000 technology startups in India was almost like a dream which may not happen. But rightly, as she pointed out, today there are 196,000 startups which are approved by DPIIT, and the number of unicorns have demonstrated the strength of it. And beyond just software or SaaS, I think in the current ecosystem, we are starting to see really global plays which covers some of the new and emerging areas. So I think we've evolved a lot in the last 25 years thanks to government support, thanks to a lot of policy support, the way in which industry associations have played a role, as well as independent entities like the IIT Tech Research Park or SIGN and IIT Bombay, which have also played a key role. So I think while it's not seen in a holistic context, the various players have played a role. We have done a lot in terms of building the ecosystem up.
Yagnesh, I'm coming to you.
So,
I mean, tell me, I mean, it looks like a very glorious growth story coming out of in India. When it comes to startup ecosystem, we've seen all the success stories. There are lapses. We will talk about that later. But in your view, in your experience, in your observation, tell me what has worked and what has failed.
Uh, yeah, thanks, Resham. So, what has worked? I'll keep my answers to like very short so that everyone gets an opportunity. What has worked for us is a awareness that has worked for us as a country who was not taken very seriously in terms of the startup ecosystem. I think the last 10 years has helped. So, we are there in terms of the radar of a lot of people globally. We are still very small. I think a lot of way to go in terms of maturity of startups. I have seen things from a larger corporate lens and a larger VC used to be part of Bessemer. So, and now 100x, and then now, of course, launch 24/7. From that lens, if I really see, it's made a good beginning. I would say it's a good start, but we have a very long way to go. I think founders have matured in the last few years, especially after COVID. I think the irrational exuberance has also kind of ended in 2024-25. We saw the funding kind of tapering out, the early stage rather. The early seed funding kind of almost plateaued or flattened in the last year, 2025. I think it will definitely rise from here. Enough VC funds have enough dry powder to invest. And all of us VCs are pretty selective, as you know, as you've seen in the last few years. And I think that should continue in the interest of the ecosystem growing healthily. I think a lot of startups increase, but who should be funded is very important for our ecosystem to mature in the next 10 years. And we'll talk more about that, of course, but that's
100%.
those are
I will come
thoughts
back
from my
to you
side.
on this point of investments. What will we look for in the new year and also in next 2 years? How will these cycles look like? I will come back to you, Yagnesh, on this point. Ritu, I'm coming to you. Your quick opening remarks, and also with that, your focus on how founders have evolved in the last 2 to 3 years, as Yagnesh has pointed out briefly.
Yeah, that was what I was going to talk about. And of course, you have to, in my view, you have to lay down the rails for the trains to run. So I do think that there are different types of rails that have been laid down in the country. Obviously, the first rail of getting mobile and all the internet, etc., to work and getting that across the country was a fillip to actually have even tech startups start out, right, at some level. So I think, but in addition to that, as everyone's spoken, of course, there was funding that came from the government, the 10 years, that has also allowed people like us to get created, right? The, domestic venture capital, if you want to call that thing, which is, not really existent there. So our journey has also been a 10-year. And every time I look back, I think the one thing that I think that this ecosystem is not possible if you did not have entrepreneurs and if you did not have talent that was willing to come work at these places. I recall an investment we made in the northeast of India, roughly probably 10 years back, 2015. The company had a really hard time finding an accountant and had to be using an accountant in another city, right? So it wasn't just that there was an entrepreneur starting up. You need talent willing to take the risk to join a startup. And it was terrible, right? So you just had to be a little crazy to have started a startup, right? And I'm sure KK was to have done his startup when he did. But, that has evolved, right? That has evolved hugely. It is an absolutely acceptable culturally, financially to kind of be part of a startup. So you have talent that is now more than happy to sort of join a startup, right? There are pockets where still it hasn't moved, but a lot has moved, right? And I'm going to take that a step further. And I think coming back to your question, Resham, of last year, I think the one change that we see is geopolitics, right?
Mhm.
And the geopolitics driving people to come be entrepreneurs in India, right? And I think that's a trend to see how that plays out, right? You had this trend of startups registering outside the country, essentially. Funding is easier, thing, whatever, all of this stuff is easier. And all of a sudden, I'm not saying that that has gone away, but I'm just saying that there are people considering actually registering and setting up their companies in India,
Yeah.
even though they are not necessarily wouldn't have done that. I guarantee you 2, 3 years back, I would not have found founders who are leaving their homes, years of careers in different geographies and saying, I'm going to come and build out of India. And I think that's
With
both a
that, I
reflection of the
with that,
opportunity.
I think I can say with full confidence that India is on the right growth path. But, I mean, I agree that there is a lot to do, and there are still opportunities to work. But so far, we are on the great growth path, and we look forward to more great stories. I'm coming to you quickly, Arjun, and for your quick comments, and to address that there has been a lot of talks, discussions going on deep tech, given that that's your focus area. Talk to us on the lines of how this moment have taken shape and what is happening right now.
Sure. No, I think a lot of great points covered. Couple of things I'd like to call out, possibly adding to what Ritu mentioned and of course KK mentioned earlier, right? In terms of ambition of the whole ecosystem has really stepped up over the last decade, right? I think if you could think of the biggest win in our ecosystem more than a decade ago was Flipkart, right? And talking about that being today and it was of course a close to $20 billion exit, that today possibly being about a $50 billion company, but we have another dozen companies that are maybe 5 billion, 10 billion, and more coming into the pipeline. It's not just unicorn of 1 billion, right? Of course, it should be backed with real revenues and growth and good economics, but ambition and of scale and longevity of building companies across the board, whether it is investors, whether it is the founders, and whether it is key employees and people joining these startups, is really thinking big and thinking massive, right? And that is a big shift over the last 10 years, right? I started my first company in 2009, had to bootstrap that. In 2010, raised venture capital. A decade after, OGs like KK did that, right? And there was some capital, but like you could list the number of funds in the country, in your two hands, right? Like 10 and you're done. You can meet everybody in the ecosystem. Today, hundreds of funds, lots of sources of capital. So risk appetite is just right. And like Ritu mentioned, it's not just, not taboo or less preferred. It is actually a preferred choice for the smartest and the best to go into startups and build startups. And that is a very, very big shift. The second piece is from a maturity perspective over the last decade and 15 years, we're now going up the value stack, right? We have done things that are low hanging fruit in a way, tech enabled products. We have done, in a way, we say roti kapda makan, e-commerce, etc., etc. But we are now going up the value stack, right? We're building core systems, core engines that are very, very critical. And obviously, some of that starts translating into deep tech slash manufacturing and AI and other things, right? We are starting to build chips. We are starting to build data centers. We're starting to build energy solutions. We're starting to, of course, do space technology and defense, correct? We're starting to do biotech, life sciences. Just the flavor is really broadening. It's because, base has been set by doing the fundamental stuff over the last 10, 15 years. So I think there's lots more to look forward, given this momentum and this approach that everybody's taking. And that's what's super exciting. Of course, we've been now running this deep tech fund for 9 years, and we've seen a massive shift. We used to see
Wonderful.
maybe
I will come
200.
back to you on these deeper insights
Sure.
from Deep Tech 100% in the second set. Quickly coming to you, Rahul, for opening remarks before we deep dive.
Thanks, Resham. So just, I think a lot of the points have already been covered, but like KK, I started way back in '97 when instead of doing my day one job from campus, I went and did a startup and people thought I was crazy. Today, when students do that, I think they are celebrated, right? Um, my parents found it very hard to understand why I was doing what I was doing. I think parents today are far more supportive of it. So I think that is a massive change, the cultural acceptance of being a founder. And that creates a huge amount of momentum. So all the things the government has done, and as Ritu pointed out, it's not just about the support they give directly to the startup ecosystem, but the environment that gets created, the digital rails that exist in the country, the India stack, the mobile penetration, all of these pieces play a part. And in our space, which is AI, the India AI mission, all of these pieces are exceedingly good initiatives which are helping develop the ecosystem. But I think the most important key element is if you go look at the quality of entrepreneurs we are producing, and that has seen a massive shift. We've uh, also seen a lot more founders who are far more technical, right? So, for example, in deep tech, you need to be technical. For AI, you need to have technical founders who can actually build in AI. And those pieces have started to exist, right? If we go back to the earlier booms that we've seen, from the internet boom to the telecom boom, huge amounts of mass consumption, as Arjun pointed out as well. But today the shift is to build global. We are not only building for India. So I think those two things are, the ambition allows us to not only build for our country and our problems, the ones we understand day in and day out, but look at problems which span countries, right? And that is the ambition of India, which is of our startup ecosystem, which I'm really excited about.
Fair point, fair point. I'm coming to you, Archana. Given that you are closely associated with GPIT and you've been doing I mean, majority of the conversations with policymakers, ministers, uh, give us a sense of what policies have worked in our favor. There are many that we have been writing about as journalists also. But beyond that, do also give us a sense, where do you see an opportunity for work? Where do you see some gaps? And your suggestions towards the end. So give us a sense from a policy making standpoint.
Like I said in my opening remarks, I think the government has been very, very responsive and they are wanting and willing to understand. And also the other thing that happens is that as the ecosystem evolves, new categories and segments emerge. Each of these things will come with its own challenges, right? So I think the challenges will continue depending on which sector or category that one is talking about. So if we take a deep tech, I mean, that's an omnibus sort of overarching term, but within deep tech, each vertical will have its own sort of both challenges and opportunities. And some of it will be at the policy level, and some of it, of course, is the vision and the ability of the founder to take advantage of that sort of category and to do that kind of like deep work, right? So I think the two key things I think that had bothered the ecosystem, again, irrespective of whichever segment or category founders were building in or investors were investing behind. I think when the registration of startups was first mooted, I think there was some, skepticism in the ecosystem as to what would that achieve. But that has achieved. It allows us to understand the scope and depth of our ecosystem. It allows policy making to be sharper, to understand where, what is getting built. The government is constantly interacting with founders, with VCs, and like Ritu mentioned, like all of us who building in the VC ecosystem. I mean, the Indian domestic VC system didn't exist. So I mean, all of us are also founders, and this is a critical part of the startup ecosystem. Without the risk capital, there are no startups in a sense, because the kind of risk a startup needs to take, and some startups are capital consumptive, they do require that risk capital. There are certain other businesses that can be bootstrapped, or maybe should be bootstrapped, right? So one, I think this DPIIT recognition of what is a startup, the startup definition, I think it helped again give clarity to policymakers, and I think that's an extremely important sort of work that happened. Then last year in the budget, angel tax getting scrapped, I think was an extreme big win for the ecosystem. The setting up of the fund of funds, which comes under DPIIT, so which is administered by SIGB, but it's the fund of fund is owned by DPIIT, and it's their sort of policy making as to where that fund of fund capital should be deployed to second level managers. I think, and the constant consultation. So before the second fund of fund was announced, there was a consultation with VCs as to what should be the focus areas, what has been fulfilled with the first fund of funds. So the fact that when the first fund of funds was allocated was 10,000 crores, which is a significant amount of capital for the size of the Indian ecosystem at that point. So the understanding that now, of course, the RDI fund has also now been announced, which is specifically aimed at deep tech. So it's clearly the government is clearly, I would now say, in step or maybe a few steps ahead, so that it is able to help the ecosystem reach its full potential. I mean, those would be my comments on this.
Interesting. Yagnesh, quickly coming to you, give us a sense on the funding cycles. We have seen some correction happening in the last 2 years. The abuse of using the word funding winter in our writing. I'm tired of that right now. But give us a sense what to expect in the coming 2-3 years. How would the funding cycles look like? What amount? And give us some data points if you can.
Yeah, thanks, Resham. I feel that I think stats aside, they do matter, but individually, when we as funds look at opportunities, uh, we don't really. I mean, at least at 24/7, we don't really look at past trends and decide where to invest or what's the current trend. Our job is to kind of look into the future, right? So, and that's what we are here for. We are here to take risks. We are here to invest in founders who will become significant in 3 to 5 to 7 to 8 years. So I think that is very important. So what is probably emerging, if you can see signs, that will be great. So I think the question shouldn't be what are the interesting trends of 26. I think the question should be what is interesting in the next 10 years. So I think each one of us is here to invest for 10 years. And that is what becomes important. And, that's what I was telling you earlier before we started the session, that I think India is moving towards becoming a large manufacturing hub. And that's where I think our focus should be. Consumption is already proven. We don't have to really prove anything that India is a huge consumption play. I think all of that is proven. Nobody's asking questions on that. What we need to now do is, for example, the space mission. Arjun was mentioning about space tech and aerospace. I think clearly focus areas, right? And why aren't we able to compete with China? Because our scale is nowhere near China. So unless we start building for manufacturing use cases, startups come up with unique ways of contributing, like energy saving, connected device. I mean, everything, shop floor automation, improvement in warehouse working. I mean, all of those will become important for our manufacturing industries to become more efficient, either in terms of increasing revenue or cost optimization. So I think that is what India as a theme is looking at, right? The whole 2047 mission, like Arjuna mentioned about the RDI fund, it is focused towards research innovation, and in manufacturing too. I mean, deep tech manufacturing, everything is connected. So I think unless we move from a services economy, from a platform economy to becoming a manufacturing hub for the world, I think that's the only way we'll achieve our 2047 vision. And I think we need to start thinking 5 to 10 years, 20 years, and not really 1 to 2 years. I think that's the single largest point I think I would like to make.
I think this is a change in conversation. Before I was, it's been 3, 4 years now that I've been speaking to investors and founders, and this used to be considered as a very, very long period. So everybody was used to define or give us sense in a shorter period of time. But I'm happy to see this change, a long-term view. Quickly bringing in Mr. Kumar before I bring in Ritu. Ritu, I would bring you in after Mr. Kumar's insights on the similar aspect, funding cycles, what kind of an investment we're looking at, also from a data standpoint, and also what stages will attract capital in what amount. So a little bit on that part. Mr. Kumar, I'm bringing you in. uh,
Yeah.
it's been so many years that you've invested in the ecosystem, you yourself being, I mean, being a founder, being a builder, now as an investor. Give us a sense how founders have evolved. It's a
See,
big discussion.
clearly what we are seeing
uh,
in the ecosystem is that the quality of founders have improved dramatically. Yeah. I think we are seeing more.
So before you carry this, take this point forward. With that, just a small point. We have seen stories of lapses. We have seen stories of governance failures as well. Address that too, Mr. Kumar.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the quality of founders clearly has evolved and it's becoming more, I would say, world class, not really reached there, but trending along the right directions. Today, you clearly find people who have got the experience of building products, services for global customers. They've seen the pain point of customers. So when they start businesses, they're really with a very clear idea in terms of what is it they're trying to solve and how are they adding value to the customer, which I think is a good thing. It's a continuous sort of improvement which needs to happen. What people need to improve is how do they really take calibrated risks? How do they really present their value proposition? How do they position their products and services? That sophistication is still not adequate, which I think with support from the ecosystem, it will significantly improve. Which I think is being reflected. If you look at seed or early stage investment, the level of activity, even during the period of what people tend to call as a funding winter, was still very active. I don't think the number of deals sort of conversations reduced, but people are getting more selective in terms of trying to understand the market, how would it really sort of scale and how value could get generated. And valuations are also becoming reasonable because there was a period of bubble when valuations really went much above what it is. Like we talk about public markets in India being overvalued, the private markets were also overvalued, all of which is now coming to more reasonable levels. So I think looking forward in FY27, I anticipate certainly in the seed and early stage investments, the pipeline is certainly healthy. Yeah. Coming back to, yes, I think we've had certainly a few cases of governance, which I think is something which the ecosystem and the industry could have avoided. But there again, I think it's a question of educating founders that building a business is not about chasing valuations. It's not a slot machine where you just sort of raise valuations and then exit, and you're trying to do everything to try and improve valuation. But it's more a question of building sustainable businesses which can stand external scrutiny. And to that extent, honestly, I believe some of the investors are also to blame for that. If you just follow the traditional model of saying grow, grow, grow without really educating the founders to build sustainable, high governance driven businesses, we will end up with a few surprises like this. But I think these are good for the muscle tone of the ecosystem, because I think these will go about and, in a way, has already improved founders' focus in terms of governance. So, yes, there is a surprise, but I think it's good for the ecosystem.
100%. There is learning for everybody in these cases. Bringing you in, Ritu, a bit of the part of Mr. Kumar's is covered. What part of the investments would look healthy? But your comments on this and largely what to expect when it comes to investments, because we're talking more on the lines of moving domestic capital more. I'm happy to see a change that a lot of successful founders are now coming up with their own VC funds. They're driving their VC funds. Second-time entrepreneurs are becoming investors, angel investors. That's a healthy shift in India as ecosystem. Talk to us on those lines, Ritu.
Yeah, so I think I think the money in the ecosystem has remained. There was a blip that went up, and so we talk about a funding winter. But if you look 10, 12, 14 billion, whatever, up and down a little bit or whatever is there. So the core activity, and to me, that's reflective of the opportunity, the core opportunity. I think the blip was an external factor for money needed somewhere to go, right? So I think the question is that going forward here, right? What are the multipliers here? Like, how does that accelerate? Like, what are the trends here that make India actually something, that number goes up much more than what it is, right? And I think that's really where, there are shifts in sectors happening, right? And, a lot of folks have alluded to the fact that, look, manufacturing or, looking at a global opportunity or looking at very structural opportunities, right? Like, for example, energy, it's not just this year's need, right? This is the need, and any country has gone through, developing energy to be able to move up the ladder. And so the investment time is now, right? The investment in some of these things is actually now. And I think in 2026, you're going to see the investments in, many of those much more fundamental things. And as I said earlier, I do think that we are also sitting in 2026 in a geopolitical situation that gives India an edge and an opportunity to not just be looking at its domestic market, but looking at it being as a world-class tech player, right? There've been, I'd call it like drip irrigation of some of this stuff over years, and where entrepreneurs, in spite of everything, have said, hey, I'm building out of India and I am, building for the globe. I think that's no longer, left to the fringes. I think that is much, much more mainstream today, right? And so I think that's the opportunity. There is the opportunity of the government unlocking money, especially in any country. Defense has been a very critical player to be unlocking venture capital or startups and new technologies, and unlocking. There's some very interesting conversations that I've been part of how government unlocks some of that, and makes startups participate in defense procurement. Right. So again, that fundamentally again opens up markets, traditionally markets that have actually helped technology development to kind of accelerate, right? So I'm very optimistic of the upcoming year that all of these different factors, right, will actually contribute to a set of actually very game-changing startups, right? But all of us as investors have to look at this with a longer term horizon, right? These things don't turn, atoms hitting bits take longer than just the bits by themselves. So we will have to have a longer horizon on how this actually.
Wonderfully put, Ritu. Quickly bringing Rahul in, taking a cue from what Ritu said on technology, because AI is a big talk right now in the town. We can't let our conversation complete without discussing AI. Now, tell me, in your observation, what factors have actually helped take AI a hardcore shape? A lot of investors are excited, a lot of builders are excited right now for AI. But there are some stories of fringe. Hey, herd following. I'm not too sure, but a happy joke about AI. So that's another story of it. But talk to us on those factors, those contributing good factors of how India's AI story is coming out.
Sure. So I think AI has been developing. I mean, I've been investing in AI for the last 7, 8 years. It's not something which has happened overnight. Of course, ChatGPT provided a huge momentum to the ecosystem. And today, tons of investors, VCs, are looking at investing into AI startups. I think the understanding of technology-based startups like AI, if you go look at earlier generation of VCs, may not have been there. Appreciation may not have been as much. But today's generation of VCs, including many on the panel today, are being able to appreciate that. So capital flows are moving towards AI. Though our capital flows in India remain below a billion towards AI, which is less than 1% of global flows, right? I mean, in 2024, it was a billion, 100 billion in AI. Globally, 2025 should be at least 50% more, closer to 150 billion. We don't have the final figures yet. So, given that context, it looks very small. But you also have to keep in mind the fact that Indian costs are much lower, right? Salary costs in India are today, especially because of the crazy salaries in AI in the valley. We're talking million plus salaries to a lot of people. Even starting up salaries are 500,000 plus when you include stock options. So we are nowhere near that. We are looking at 10x, 15x difference to that in India. So our 700-800 million goes 10x further. Then then the figures stop looking as different from what's happening globally. And so I think we've been able to establish India as the third hub after US and China in terms of AI. So I think there's a huge amount of potential. Government is very supportive of it. The kind of startups you're seeing, and we are seeing two kinds of startups. One, building for the world. And actually the first wave, which we've seen over the last few years, has been more that. What I expect to see more of in 2026 and including more capital flowing towards that is consumer AI built for Indian consumers. So we should see both trends. The global trend, building for AI solutions for global problems and selling into international markets, will continue. I think that trend is only going to accelerate. We talked about how some founders are coming back to the country to found companies. Continues apace. I mean, they're leaving top, all the big, the Mag 7 people are leaving Mag 7 and coming back to India to do AI startups. So I think the quality of talent, the amount of capital available, the government support, all of this combined should see a huge jump in the ecosystem in AI investments.
Wonderful, Rahul, on that point. I'm quickly bringing in Archana. I'm really tempted to talk about IPO story of India right now. We are seeing a lot of startups going crazy about IPO, and I'm happy to share this joy with all of you, because we are seeing great growth stories coming out with IPO. But there are also not so successful IPOs that have taken place in India. Archana, in your observation, what is your point of view on IPO story? Is it a bubble? How confident are you on the IPO trend right now in India? How far do you think it'll stay strong?
I think, India is a very, very large country. We've got a fast growing economy. So actually, very few things are a bubble. And, I think we should be appreciative. And what happens is that sometimes a trend starts, and of course people then want to be part of the trend, and there's nothing wrong, it happens globally. I think, like, if you talk about generative AI and what is happening with it in Silicon Valley, is it a bubble or will it go bust? Maybe, maybe not. See, what happens is that when there is a certain maturity or there's a new category, there will be a rush of capital interest, people wanting to, sort of book profits, be able to be part of that windfall, right? So I think we should be careful about, terming things a bubble or too soon. And I think we're a large country. I think, given the scale and size of our economy and its growth, and I think the interest that there is now with the middle class for the capital markets, so there is far more domestic capital coming into and retail capital coming into our capital markets. So I think it's also a function of that. The other truth is that these new age companies offer products and services that don't exist in the capital markets from a portfolio standpoint. So that there is an interest in these companies is a good thing. Some, IPOs do well and some don't. And again, that's a function of many things. A lot of founders, of course, are inexperienced. I mean, everybody does an IPO only once in their lifetime. So there is inexperience. Sometimes there is an I think, enthusiasm of valuing yourself. But that doesn't mean that there is a fundamentally something wrong with a company. Pricing an IPO is an art, which sometimes, between the founders and the bankers and all the people associated with the IPO could get wrong. And I do want to point out the Facebook IPO when it happened. I mean, it sank without a trace, and even the Infosys IPO didn't do well, actually. Um, and the banker to that IPO, tells that story very often. And look where the Infosys stock is. So I think, or even the Meta stock is. So look, I think IPO is a very technical, tricky, from a product standpoint for the people who are preparing for the IPO. So
Point taken.
mispricing
Yeah.
is possible, and of course, and sometimes, of course, you don't meet all the quarter sort of forecasts that you do make, because there are macro events, and also founders are new to sort of then, the kind of scrutiny there is when you engage with the retail market. So there is a learning curve there as well. But I don't think it's a bubble, and I think it's a good sign of maturity that founders do want to unlock these technologies and new age companies to the retail investor.
Well said, well explained, Archana. Now, a statement that you made looks a very catchy headline to me. Pricing an IPO is an art, and 100% there are many, many factors that are not under control of a particular founder. Yagnesh, quickly bringing you in, your quick thoughts on how does the IPO story of India look like to you?
Well, I think IPO is a function of a lot of companies growing for a number of years. Certainly, I think globally there's enough excitement on the IPO scene, right? Anthropic and then a host of others are going to get listed this year, and it is bound to excite also the Indian markets. I think there are a lot of good companies lined up this year too, and I think the more important point, we being VCs here, less really concerned with the IPO market in the immediate future, but I think the companies we fund, we probably will list in, let's say, 4 or 5 years. So I think the whole pipeline that we've seen on funding, it's a sequence, right? The more companies you fund at the seed stage, Series A, B, go on to list. So I think what India needs is more of funding at the seed stage, so that we create a very healthy foundation pipeline, the funnel, which kind of gives you like a host of unicorns probably every year after 5 years. I think that's what we are all focused on. The listed markets will do its own thing. I think we at 24/7 VC are nearly not really thinking about that. It's all a function of all of the funds put together from the
Very
VC
well explained.
ecosystem
Yeah.
that will bring in the new age companies. You've already seen so many new age companies getting listed this year, right? 25, the year that went by, also 24. So I think that is happening. It's signaling a very fundamental shift in funded startups to get listed. And I think that for that to catch momentum, I think more and more government fund of funds, more and more VC funds need to pump in capital. I think what we are missing is a whole bunch of early stage capital that needs to really triple. Like a $2 billion in early stage is practically nothing. In the overall scenario of capital markets, I think it's a drop in the ocean. Unless we keep adding more, I don't think we are looking at a new age technology companies getting listed with that speed. So that is, I mean,
Well
I'm sorry, I'm
explained. Yeah.
digressing sometime, but I think it's a macro point that I think all of us
But I think,
might agree.
you've made all the points correct, and all the points that nobody would on the panel would disagree with you. So all the right points there on both the points, whether it's about the different stages or on the IPO
Thank
story.
you. Thanks.
With last 5 minutes, I will stretch 1 minute only. I will give 1 minute each to kindly conclude with one large specific output or outlook or a trend that I can take away, or the listeners on the show can take away with that. When we look at 2026, or let's say 2 to 3 years more, what is that one big trend that you are looking for? And from a larger standpoint, India's startup ecosystem can look out for one specific thing that I can make list of six. I'm quickly coming to you, Mr. Kumar.
I'm going to take the privilege of doing two since I've gone on first. One is clearly, I think corporates in India need to start creating a domestic capital ecosystem and put in money into venture funds and so on, because that's a very key requirement today. Government has done what it could do, but I think corporates need to do that. And extending that, unlike US, where corporates consciously acquire smaller companies for technology and customers, practically there are companies which have thousands of crores on their balance sheet. They are managing it more as a treasury income without spending a few hundred crores to acquire talent and technology, which will again really make ecosystem more strong. Those are my two asks.
Wonderful, wonderful. Arjun, quickly to you.
Yeah, I'm going to zone in, of course, in our area of interest, which is deep tech, and specifically within deep tech, one call out defense as a sector, and which includes therefore manufacturing, precision manufacturing, etc. But for defense components and full-fledged systems, we're in a unique time in, geopolitically, and we need to be more self-reliant and self-sufficient and sovereign on so many things. This is the right time to do that. So there is a real opportunity for all of us as investors and for entrepreneurs to really build for Indian defense ecosystem. The part two, I will say, to add on to the same sector is now over the last few years, although still early, we have seen some top of the funnel in terms of deal flow and seed funding or pre-series A, maybe up to series A. It is time for deep tech also to get, with the assistance of the government capital, which is RDI fund, etc., to get that growth capital, early to late growth capital, so that these companies can get to that trajectory that we have seen in other categories in the past, right? So
Yeah,
that
I
is
think on
an
this
immense.
point, I think on this point that the country is on the right track. In some years, we will see that take shape too. So point well taken, Arjun. Ritu, quickly your point, your concluding point.
So I'm very excited about the intersection. We talk a lot about AI and we talk a lot about AI and agents and all of that kind of stuff. But I'm actually very excited about the intersection of AI with actually really very hard problems. So, very interestingly, you're saying, how can I build a chip with not just silicon, but AI on it so I can be much more versatile? How can I discover drugs with AI? How can I come up with new seeds with AI? How can I build nuclear fusion with AI? How can I, so the capabilities of the AI to actually play a role to accelerate what are more fundamental technologies. I think that's it's been a
That
trend, it's
really,
been a growing
that
trend.
really, really sounded like a showcase of next chapter of how would startups of India look like. Thank you so much on that point. Archana, your point.
So I've made this point a lot, and I do agree with Krishna Kumar and of course with Arjun as well. I think we need to build our own SoftBank. We need to build our own Tiger Global. we do not have growth capital. In fact, I would say we are undercapitalized even from an early stage perspective. I mean, there are lots of very, very small early stage funds, but given the ambition of our founders, given the opportunity that we have, both as a market as well as a talent pool, I think we can build very, very large companies very quickly if there was adequate amount of risk capital available.
Interesting, interesting. Rahul?
Yeah, so, in 2025, you saw a huge amount of excitement around AI and, models, innovation. So we were talking about more intelligence, but I think 2026, what we should see is AI actually solving problems, AI being more useful. So whether it is for businesses, whether it's for consumers, whether it's for science, like from discovering medicines to new materials, AI becoming really useful is the key trend for 26 for me.
And finally, Yagnesh.
Yeah, well, just to kind of double down on everyone, but just providing a slightly deeper nuances. Of course, industrial AI enabled platforms. I think smart manufacturing and mass customization. I think those are the two themes that I think will gain prominence in 2026. Digital twins, cobots in manufacturing lines, preventive maintenance, and real time energy optimization in industrial plants. I think those are the focus areas, and everywhere I think AI is super encompassing. So I think you can't undermine AI in any of these processes. But I think a lot of that is something that I think will get started funding, and not just 26, but also beyond.
Very well said. On this note, we've now come to an end of this discussion. In the last 10 years, I mean, with all of your insights, I can confidently say that we have covered a very, very huge portion of what we have the big ambition of in India. But I'm pretty excited about what next 10 years hold for us when it comes to startups of India. And on this point, I really, really would like to thank each one of you to make time for this and for your insights on each point. Thank you so much, Arjun, Rahul, Archana, Ritu, Krishna Kumarji, and Yagnesh. Thank you so much. And I look forward to many more such discussions with all of you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for
Thank
having
you,
us.
Resham.
Thank you.